Today on CityCast Denver, many Denverites love TikTok, and some have even built their lives and livelihoods around it. But Denver recently joined dozens of other cities and states across the country, as well as the federal government, in banning the app from publicly owned devices. And now our senior senator, Michael Bennet, is calling for TikTok to be banned altogether. So we called him up to ask why. Today is Monday, February 27th, 2023. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Senator Michael Bennet, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Bree, thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
So, you don't like TikTok, is that?
I don't like TikTok so much. That is true. That is a true statement.
Well, you recently called for TikTok to be removed from Apple and Google's app stores, that's a big ask. Why?
There are two reasons, really, for me. One is I'm a member of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, and I've become more and more concerned over the years about what it means to have this massive social media platform that a third of American citizens are coughing up their data when it is a platform that's not even owned by anybody in America. It's owned by Beijing. And ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok, is subject to all of the data rules that the Chinese Communist Party has in place. And that includes a responsibility to disgorge any data that the Chinese Communist Party decides they want TikTok to disgorge. So I think that's a real national security concern. I think it's a real concern of a lot of people in America about what could happen to their privacy. And it's also, very clear to me that this is another instance where, the Chinese government is willing to troll us, and is unwilling to allow the United States to have reciprocal access to its citizens. And that may not be the biggest point that I'm making, but I think that's a very important point. The second point is that my wife Susan and I have raised three daughters in this era, and I am very aware, I think that most of us are, who have spent time with young people. I was the superintendent of the Denver Public Schools before I was in this job. And we know that there is an epidemic of teenage mental health issues all across the state of Colorado and all across this country. And I think there's a deep concern on the part of students and young people, as well as parents, that a complete lack of negotiation with TikTok or, frankly, the other large digital platforms over the economics of these platforms, our right to privacy, the way the algorithms drive people in certain directions. We've never had a negotiation with TikTok about that, or with our large national digital platforms about that. And I think that's something that's long, long overdue.
Something interesting, I think, though, that we're talking about is I've been on social media for 20 years. I've willingly participated and given all of my data to that space. And TikTok is interesting because we see aspects of people's lives from the moment they wake up. And so I wonder, what do you think about the fact that we give this to TikTok?
I think that's a great point, and something that we should debate. Really, the most valuable app that I have, and it's changed my life for the better. I mean, it really has, is Google Maps, and it matters a lot to me when I am coming back to Denver from Colorado Springs, or I'm coming back to Denver from Fort Collins, and I'm sitting in that horrendous Friday afternoon traffic, which is horrible, and is a serious pain point for me. I no longer am asking myself, is there a better way? Is there some other route that I can take? I know that Google Maps is my North Star, or Waze, if I'm using it, is my North Star. I don't have to question the direction that we're going. Having said that, I haven't made a trade to Google, or that says that I'm happy for you to know every place I am and to strip my privacy from me in order for you to get me out of traffic or to show that I'm not in the worst traffic. And that's a negotiation I think we should have. These guys are hoovering up our privacy, our personal identity. You might be fine with that, Bree. I don't feel obviously the same way you do. And there might be others in your generation that feel the same way that you do. But I'm not, for me, the idea that I would sacrifice my identity or my personal data just so these platforms could sell me back targeted advertising on the back of their poisonous algorithms, so that they and the other large platforms can become, and they have been until their stocks were recently totally cratered, literally 20% of the market cap of our stock exchange. That's how valuable that data is that they're stealing from us. I think we should have a negotiation about that.
Sure. And I agree with you. I wouldn't say that I love doing that. I just know that it's sort of part and parcel of being on social media. But what I find interesting, though, too, is you're not calling for Facebook or Instagram or Google Maps to be removed from app stores. Why is TikTok the focus for you?
Well, I got another idea for those guys. So first of all, TikTok is different in my mind because TikTok is controlled by Beijing. And, we already know that Beijing has affected the algorithms of TikTok so that you can't find out the truth about the Beijing's takeover of Hong Kong. We know they're adjusting the algorithms so you can't find out the truth about what the persecution of the Uyghurs looks like in China. We know that they are doing the same thing with Taiwan. And by the way, it comes up in town hall meetings that I'm having when I hear people repeating the propaganda that Beijing is hoping that we'll repeat about Hong Kong, for example. So that is why TikTok, I think, is a special case. And I continue to believe it is a special case. So let's draw a line around that for 1 second and just say, at least in my mind, TikTok is different. For the other ones, I have deep concerns as well. But look, I can tell you, there is virtually nobody at Facebook who understands the algorithms that Facebook is directing toward, middle school students and high school students in America. And Facebook has commissioned study, after study after study that raises the question that this is causing mental and emotional harm.
Right. Mark Zuckerberg knows that Instagram impacts young people's mental health, and they have not changed a thing about it.
Exactly. They haven't changed anything, and they haven't changed anything in part because, to go back to my earlier point, the American people have been in no position to negotiate with Mark Zuckerberg over anything. And those companies, frankly, Bree, are less well regulated than your average small business in Boulder or your average small business in Windsor or in Denver. And I think we should change that. And a year ago, I wrote a bill and introduced it. It's the first bill in Congress that would create a new federal agency like the FCC. And their job would be to study the data, consider the effects on the American people, and have a discussion on behalf of the American people in order to empower the American people about the issues we're talking about this morning. Privacy, a huge one. Mental health, a huge one. National security, a huge one. We saw the Russians in 2016 invade Mark Zuckerberg's platform, and he wouldn't even admit that they were there for a long time. We need a discussion about that, not to mention the antitrust issues that are very, very significant. These are massive companies on the scale of the companies that the last significant progressive era in America took on. And I think we should take them on in this era. And having a new agency to do that, just like the antitrust agency that, the Justice Department that Teddy Roosevelt relied on in his day, or the FCC when, at the advent of television, it just makes sense to me that we do the same thing here.
This episode is brought to you by the Jewish Community Center. The JCC is excited to be presenting the Denver Jewish Film Festival, taking place in the Elaine Wolf Theater and the Plus Theater. Enjoy a stellar lineup of Jewish cinema featuring more than 30 films in various genres from countries all over the world. The Denver Jewish Film Festival takes place March 11th through the 19th with in-person and virtual screenings. Or enjoy the entire fest from your couch March 20th through the 29th when all films will be available on demand. The 27th Annual Denver Jewish Film Festival is powered by the Schoten Foundation and supported by SCFD and Colorado Creative Industries. For tickets and more information, visit jccdenver.org. I want to go back to what you were talking about with the Chinese government, and I wonder, can you talk about what your concerns or worries are about how the Chinese government will use our data?
Yeah, there already is evidence that they've taken stripped data from Europe and taking it back to Beijing. I had a meeting last week or the week before with the CEO of TikTok, and he said that was true, that reporting was true. So first of all, we have an instance where the data from the Western world has gone back to Beijing. Second concern I have is, their algorithms and their AI infrastructure is allowing them to push whatever data they want toward whomever they want. And there's a very, very short step from that place to a place where they're hoovering up the data and they're seeing every single thing, Bree, that you've clicked on, just because they're interested in that. And they could then use that if they wanted to manipulate you. In a worst case, they could serve up propaganda for you to consume. And, that's not the same issue that we confront with Facebook, although I'm very worried about certain kinds of propaganda that show up on Facebook, but that's not state sponsored. That's not Beijing. And I think there's a difference in that. And if anybody who's listening doesn't think that, if it's in their interest to manipulate our data, or to hoover up their data just because they say they're not doing it today, I think that's very naive when it comes to Beijing.
So you mentioned that you have actually sat down and talked with the CEO of TikTok, and I wonder, are you satisfied with what he told you? Does it feel like there's a start of a good faith negotiation happening here?
No, I was deeply dissatisfied. I didn't know. I think he seemed like a perfectly decent person, and I was grateful for his time. But what I asked him about was, I said, look, we all know that there are laws in China, and thank God we don't live in China, but there are laws in China that limit the amount of time that kids can be on social media. We know that in China, you don't show TikTok. You don't show American TikTok to the Chinese people. You show what's called, the broccoli version of TikTok, so that when kids are watching it, they're watching, shows about physics and mathematics and things like that, rather than having, spending their entire afternoon watching dance competition. And there's a reason for that. The Chinese Communist Party has referred to digital media as digital opium. And I think they're pumping us full of their digital opium while they're protecting their children from it. I'm an old fossil, Bree, I recognize that, but there is not, when I think about all the young people that work for me that are in their 20s, and think about my older daughters who are in their early 20s, there's not almost a single one of them that doesn't feel like they dodged a really important bullet by not having social media completely overwhelm their middle school years. And for their younger brothers and sisters, for my 18-year-old daughter, who's younger, obviously, than my older kids, they are the ones that are being engulfed by that, whether it's TikTok or anybody else. And I think that, the parents that I hear, the moms who wait outside of the town halls that I have, who say to me things like, my daughter is 5'10" and she weighs 105 pounds. And because of what she's seen, on social media, she feels like she's got the worst body image of anybody in her class. I don't think we should just accept that as somehow the cosmos, that we're in, especially when we know that all this is about is driving Mark Zuckerberg's bottom line. That's what it's all about.
So I know a lot of people, I know a lot of our listeners love TikTok. And honestly, a lot of people have been successful on the platform. They say that they've used it to save their family businesses, to advocate for change in communities, to meet, to meet people, and to see like new things and explore parts of the world that they wouldn't necessarily see. What do you say to Denverites or folks in Colorado who love TikTok?
I guess what I would say is that every time we've encountered a new technology, or especially new media technologies, we've had to have a debate and a negotiation about what we want that to look like. There's a reason why our kids can't spend Saturday morning sitting watching cigarette ads on TV. There's a reason why they can't sit there on, watching television. It's partly the technology, it's partly the regulation being driven by, to one more diet ad after another diet ad after another diet ad, or another, ad about suicide. There's a reason why that's true. And in the case of this new technology, we haven't set up those guardrails, and those guardrails are not for me to set up. Those guardrails are for the democracy to set up, for the American people to set up. And so what I would say to everybody who's benefited in the ways that you've described it, first of all, it's awesome. I'm glad you have benefited in those ways. And I think what we should do is create a Bill of Rights together for the American people that says, these are the good parts of this we're willing to accept, and this is the stuff we're not willing to accept.
Sure. So I know a lot of folks that get news from TikTok. I know that I think about social media and the way that it has become the essential way for a lot of candidates, a lot of politicians to connect with voters. And a lot of your colleagues are very popular on TikTok. Like I'm thinking about our governor, Jared Polis. Like he was pretty prolific on TikTok last year. And I just wonder, are you worried at all by taking this anti-TikTok position that you're giving up this important avenue to reach young people?
Well, I think we should be finding all ways to reach young people. And as long as TikTok is there, I guess we should be using that too. But you raise a really important point. And by the way, let me back up. I'm not talking about using TikTok. I think the other platforms we should be using, because they're not owned by Beijing. There's a reason why the federal government is banning the use of all federal employees on TikTok. There's a reason why the city and county of Denver is banning it from the city and county of Denver. But there are plenty of alternative platforms to people to have that conversation. One of the things that you just said, I think, is so critically important and is at the heart of all of this, which is people are getting their quote unquote news from these platforms. And actually a majority of Americans say that's where they're getting their news. There is no editorial supervision. There's no editorial content on many of these sites. There's no way to know whether something is more true or less true just because it's been posted a million times, on TikTok or on Facebook. Many of the people that invaded the Capitol on January 6th were doing it because they were reading the quote unquote news on social media. And I would not say that you shouldn't take in the share of data that you want from social media. That's up to you. That's up to everybody. But I do think that in a democracy, we have a responsibility to try to understand what the perspective is of edited content that still remains in our society. And we are going through a profound transition to an ecosystem that's both really, really exciting, I think, in many, many ways, but also hugely challenging. And it's really important for us to demand of each other that we have a democracy that's reality-based. I think that's really important.
So can we find you on social media if we want to follow you, Senator Bennet?
You can find me. Well, I've got a Twitter account you guys can find.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Senator Bennet, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Bree. I really enjoyed it.
And here's what else Denverites are talking about. Gun reform. Last Thursday, Democrats at the state capitol unveiled new legislation to strengthen Colorado's gun laws. We knew this was going to be a big priority for the Dems after the Club Q shooting in Colorado Springs last November, and now we have a sense of what's at stake. According to the Denver Post, the 4 bills introduced would increase the legal age for buying a gun to 21, impose a 3-day waiting period between purchase and possession, and expand who can use the red flag law. Senate President Steve Fenberg says they had a simple guiding principle, quote, "What can we do right now that will save the most lives in Colorado tomorrow?" And finally, we're hiring. We're looking for a new audio producer to join our small team. So if you're a versatile and inventive producer who lives in and loves Denver, check out the show notes to this episode for a link to apply. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell the CEO of TikTok, Show Chew, about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Denver, by texting Denver to 66866. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later.
I hope that was all right. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you.
Great. Good. It was fun. Well, let me come back sometime.
Oh, absolutely. We'd
After
love to
I've
have you
taken
back.
your TikTok away from you.
I just use it for recipes, that's all.
I can give you other advice about that. Do you like tofu? Do you want a tofu recipe?
I do. I love tofu, actually.
I can tell you what it is.
Tell me the tofu recipe.
I'll tell you right now. Take 1 brick of tofu. Sometimes people like that really extra firm kind. I like the moderately firm kind, not the extra firm kind. Press the water out of it. So put a frying pan on top, press the water out of it, cut it up into little cubes like this. Put it into 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil in the same pan that you use to weight it down. The cast iron pan works best. Salt and pepper on those cubes of tofu. Brown the cubes of tofu, so you got to move them around a little bit, then take them out. Add to the pan, to the oil, 1 teaspoon or 2, or tablespoon maybe, I guess, 1 tablespoon of garlic, red chili pepper flakes to your heart's content, some ginger if you want it. Cook that for 10 seconds. Then put back in the pan half a cup of water and either a bag of snow peas or the same amount of green beans. That's what I prefer myself. Turn the heat up to boiling, cook that. And once the water is gone, which it will be gone soon, your vegetables will be perfectly cooked. I'm telling you, al dente.
Okay.
Perfect. Not too soft, just right. Put the tofu back in, add 2 tablespoons of soy sauce and the green parts of a scallion, by the way, which you've already cut up and used the white parts of scallion in the fried oil with the garlic and the red peppers. Give it a stir. Enjoy over rice.
I will
try.
There
you go.
I'm going to try that. That sounds amazing.
We're
having tofu tonight.
Well, good. Try it. You'll like it.
Thank you.
If you can't remember everything I said, it's Mark Bittman's recipe.
Totally. Very familiar with Mark Bittman. I will do,
well.
Senator. Thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.